This is The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. I'm writer-collector Ryan Condal.
And I'm writer-collector Dave Mandel. Hey, Ryan.
Hi, Dave.
How are you?
We haven't seen each other in a while.
I know. We skipped a week. Been a little busy. I'm finished. That's where I was. I finished, finally. Like 3.5
Fantastic.
years. I finally finished White House Plumber. So this last 2 weeks have been a blur of sound mixes, color timing, making lists of props that I wanted sent to my house. So yeah,
all the important things.
All the really
to wrap
important.
Out a show.
The way you end a show properly, you steal what you can before they send it off to the HBO archives. The difference here being nobody cares about any of these props. Let me be really clear. There was not a lot of HBO being like, wait a second, where's that? Yeah. Where's that envelope with the handwriting on it that cost us a nickel to make? So yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
you ran your own little Watergate break-in.
Yeah, but except imagine a break-in where nothing was locked and nobody cared that you did it, and you can kind of go on a podcast and go, "I did it! I stole everything," and they're just like, "Yeah, that's great. We're happy not to store the stuff." So yeah,
very proud of yourself.
Yeah,
very good.
Which I guess vaguely is my what's new in props as well, by the way, which is I took some stuff from the office. So basically, yeah.
I couldn't believe, I saw you tweet this week and I could not believe that it had been 3.5 years. I mean, I knew it was a long time, and I sort of vaguely remember recording these podcasts when you were in that awful apartment in I
think apartment is a kind word for it. My bachelor's something or other in the whatever hotel I was in. It was just horrific. But
what was it? Fishkill was the place where you were staying?
Fishkill, New York. Yeah, where dreams go to die.
Yes, fish and dreams.
But it was. I mean, obviously the pandemic, but even if you subtract the pandemic, this was a very long time for 5 episodes of anything. Just kind of crazy, actually. But yeah. Done.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. I mean,
done.
We sort of started at the same time, kind of. I mean, in earnest. I mean, I guess I've been on, House of the Dragon a little longer, but that was more of script pilot phase, trying to get the thing willed into existence, whereas it was already kind of moving when you came. So yeah, that's an insanely long time. But that's really great. I'm really excited to see it. I thought that the trailers were really fantastic, and I think the cast is just superstar cast, and it's so great.
I appreciate it. I no longer can care. I just am so glad to be done. I'll care again someday, but right now, just so happy to be done. I can't explain it. Yeah, the idea that I am not going to wake up on Monday and go to an edit room just feels like some level of
last day of school,
beyond last day of Emancipation Proclamation kind of.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, cool. Or at least an end to my indentured servitude. I paid off my land or something. I don't know, some version of that. But yeah.
Your sentence has been commuted.
Exactly. I've been given a pardon by the president. Exactly. So yeah. Gerald Ford pardoned me. There's my Watergate tie-in. How about you? Anything? Have you stolen anything prop-wise? What's new in stealing props? Yeah,
always. I make a hobby of it. No, I didn't really. I guess this is sort of tangentially related. But my little one had a kind of faraway birthday party thing today. Actually, that's very fresh, and my older one has gotten very into sort of my movies, just sort of fascinated by it, and always asks me, how old do I have to be to see that one? How old do I have to be to see that one? And she really wants to see Aliens, and I don't know, she's really focused on Aliens.
How old does she have to be to see Aliens, by the way?
I'm like, I feel like that's 9 or 10. I feel like, because it's sort of cartoon violence when you really get to it.
But do you have to see Alien first before you see
That's the
Aliens?
Thing,
and how old do you have to be to see Alien? So isn't that part of the problem
14.
there? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think you can see them I think you can kind of see them out of order, and I would definitely do Aliens first. And then, she asked about, other things too. She asked about House of the Dragon. I always say 27 for that one, because that's just, that's a ways down the line.
My kids ask me about Veep and Eurotrip, and it's sort of 35 for both of them.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. particularly Eurotrip, Jesus. Yeah. So anyway, so I made a little list for her overnight, and I just said I'm going to make a list, and you can choose. And I put on the list, I put Batman '89, of course, fascinated by it. She used to call, very sweetly, the Joker the jokey lady, because I think she was confused that all the makeup and that was a man, and it had to be a lady. And doesn't do that anymore. And then Indiana Jones, of course, because she's sort of fascinated by the poster and then the hat and the whip and all that. And then I put Princess Bride on, and she didn't even think about it. It was just a split, blink decision. And she said Princess Bride. So she saw Princess Bride today for the first time. It was like this, like, eye-opening. And she sat there, and it's perfect because it's like 100 minutes long, eyes like saucers the whole time. Loved it. Was following along. And sort of had to ask for clarification on a couple of things, and like was a little confused about, does that man actually have 6 fingers, right, or is that movie magic? Because I always talk to her about movie magic, and how she knew the ROUSs weren't real, but like was like, how do they do that? So I explained, let's a little guy in a suit, and it was just nice. It was nice to be able to share that experience with her. And she thought, it was funny, she thought that Fred Savage and Columbo were not part of the movie. She was like, those aren't actors, right? Like those are real people. And then so she was doing this sort of separation dissociation thing, but it was just really enjoyable. Really enjoyable.
Oh, I'm glad she liked it. What did she make a prop list when you were done?
We're working on it.
Okay.
We're working
what is
on
she
it,
thinking? Yeah. Where's she leaning?
Probably a whole closet full of buttercup dresses would be my guess. Was the thing.
Very nice.
But she laughed out loud when Carol Kane ran in the room and said, "I'm not a witch, I'm your wife," because my wife always says that to the kids.
So now she knows where it came from. That's excellent.
She thought that my wife was just reminding everybody that she's not a witch, and now she realized it's a movie quote, and she really enjoyed that. So maybe just Carol Kane in like a glass tube.
That would be an excellent.
But I'll see. I'll follow up in the morning.
That would be a good prop. I've got one other update that I cannot believe our long national nightmare is over. Sit tight there. See it sitting here. It was hiding in the back.
Yes.
It finally showed.
Look at that thing.
Finally showed. I'm not doing it great here. I can put it in front of me like that. So there you go. It finally showed. It only took them, honestly, it felt like 2 months of, I don't know, whatever kinds of shenanigans. It did arrive beautifully packaged by the shippers and whatnot. And it did come, but I still cannot believe how long this took, but actually finally though, how happy I was once I actually got it. So yeah, I was pretty, exhausted.
The money laundering has come to an end.
Exactly.
Or it begins anew. That's fantastic, Dave. I'm really happy about that. I would show you mine, but I've had it for like 2 months, and I didn't know how to break it to you. But I also won something in that auction.
Just fuck you.
And it came literally next day because I just sent my assistant down to pick it up.
Because I live across the street from the auction house.
Yeah,
I live across the street from Sotheby's UK or Bonham's UK. I don't even know wherever the hell I bought it.
I didn't unlike you, I did not try to buy it in Russian rupees. So ruples. I think rupees are Indian currency, but yes, no, I've had mine for quite a bit of time. It was actually tie-in. It was the Princess Bride. I got that's my only piece from the Princess Bride, and I have a clapper now, and it's glorious, and it sits in our cinema room, and we'll post pictures on the feed. It's wonderful.
Had your daughter, by the way,
same auction, same cinematographer.
Had your daughter, right, Biddle, had your daughter seen the clapper, and was that one of the reasons Princess Bride was relevant to her?
Super into that, and they have we have this really cool. It's not a Mondo poster, but it's Mondo style Princess Bride poster done by this amazing Thai artist that I'm going to butcher her name, but her name is like Isa Anandfada, and she does these really it reminds me a lot of like Jeff Darrow's work. It's not that style, but it's that super like layers and layers and like onions of detail,
hyper detailed.
Yeah, and she does these really cool storybook posters where she'll basically every major scene, moment, dramatic beat is hidden in the poster, but it's still a movie poster. It's really cool.
Oh, wow.
And I still go and look at it and find things like, these clever little icons that she's drawn in, and it's just amazing. It's like 10 color. It's really cool. And it was a private commission that there were only like 50 made of them or something like that, but it hangs in our in the girls' playroom. And they love the poster, and they've been asking to see it for a while. So I think that's more of her visual connection to it, because it's Buttercup and Wesley, and Andre the Giant like looking down at them. But now definitely she was like
the Clapper.
That's
and the Clapper.
And the
Clapper.
Yes, correct.
Well, this thing I feel arrived just in the nick of time to be a wonderful segue for this week's episode. Agree or disagree with that, as segues go?
I agree. I mean, I think we couldn't have planned it better, and we did plan it, and we planned the hell out of it.
This didn't just happen, is what you're saying.
This isn't just a off the cuff conversation. This like most of Dave and my work is well scripted, everybody. But we wanted to. This is a kind of a long delayed topic on the podcast. Clapperboards. So we're going to talk all about what the hell you even call them. And I thought no better person to bring on to discuss these fine things, and the person that probably has the most of them in the world, probably more than any cinematographer, I think, who's actually worked in the business, and mostly because he's cleaned out all the cinematographers that worked in the business, living and dead. And he's a good friend of the podcast, friend of collectors, and friend to animals as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Glen Carroll. Welcome, Glenn.
Hi, guys. Good to be here.
Glenn. Yeah, I guess you don't even have to speak. Just duck, I guess, is really the honest answer. You don't even have to. You don't even have to talk. So, have you ever collected clappers?
Never. It's funny actually. You mentioned the Biddle auction, and I picked up the Willow one there, and I just got on the train to go and pick it. So no waiting.
God damn all of you.
Sorry. But I paid at the window and then went to the desk where you collect it, and the young guy brought it out, put it on the desk, and looked at it and went, "Willow, niche." And I don't really understand what he meant by that.
That was super judgy. Was he a hipster?
Was he a hipster?
Was he wearing like a waistcoat, and did he have purple hair? Because that was definitely like a judgy. I feel like niche is the way Generation Z judges us Gen Xers now.
Yeah, and then he brought the V. I got the V for Vendetta one as well, and he brought that out and made no comment, which I thought was even stranger.
So not niche. Interesting.
Not niche.
Not
totally
niche and niche. Well, we got to just dive into this. This is insane. And I feel like, just really quickly, just turn around and just point and tell us what you got.
If you're not on YouTube at this point, pause your audio
just
podcast.
Go to YouTube, because
I don't care if
insane.
you're driving. Just it's safe. Just bring it up on your phone, YouTube, and follow along with us. Okay, cool. Go ahead, Glenn.
I'll start at the top. So there's Ridley Scott's Legend, Michael Mann's The Keep.
Oh wow,
very good.
Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Alien, when it was The Alien during production.
Fuck you, with all due respect, Glenn. But
sorry.
Fuck you. Yeah,
it's my favorite one.
Goonies,
Die Hard, Braveheart.
Very good.
Batman, Saving Private Ryan.
Wow.
Muppet Treasure Island.
Oh, good. Yeah.
V for Vendetta. I can see that one.
Yeah, V for Vendetta. Star Wars Episode 1, Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh.
Down there is
nice.
When Harry Met Sally.
Really? When Harry Met Sally? That's surprising. Okay.
Random. And then Miller's Crossing.
Oh, wow.
Hellboy, Willow, and The Rock.
Niche.
So niche. Everything sort of
Very
Alcatraz-y.
Really impressive.
I don't know. I don't know which one is my favorite. That's a hell of a mix.
But this is like what are we going to say?
Is this like just a small percentage of your collection?
There's like 15 up there, and how many would you say that you have in total?
Probably about nearing 200.
Wow.
But these are the best ones. These are by far the best ones.
Yeah. The other ones are much more niche.
so niche. And when you pick them up from one camera guy, he tends, you buy maybe everything that he's had in a shed. Right. So you'll buy 10 or 15, and one or two of them will be great, and then there'll be some.
It is always interesting, and it was true even a little bit with the Biddle collection. But when you come upon a DP or camera, whatever, someone who has it, whatever it is, and you kind of get to see their career, more often than not, you get to see them like kind of like something early on that's kind of interesting, and then they become like really good and kind of known, and their projects get better and better and better. And then if they last too long, then the projects get slightly less good. Yes, exactly, on the back end. It's just sort of a fascinating, here's my career in clapperboards. I mean, which is, I don't know, just a fascinating way of thinking about it. I guess you can do it also with like director's chairs and other things like that, that kind of, I don't know, just to reduce your entire career to, I don't know, clappers, or I don't know. There's something very interesting about that.
But what a cool like trophy thing to be able to bring home. And I think that's we'll get into that this way. We sort of jumped ahead into Glenn. I just wanted to back up a little bit because we don't usually do the what do you do for a living, but I think in this case it's very relevant with Glenn. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, and then we can just jump into the clappers before we sort of lose our way. But so Glenn works in the business. Glenn, can you tell our listening audience what it is you do?
Yeah, I'm
Hollywood.
For Hollywood. I'm an assistant director.
Very good.
But I got into the industry.
Explain what that is to everybody.
Well, I started in 2000 working for a vehicle company in films, and so I did Mummy Returns and Harry Potter. Cool. So I kind of got into it that way, and then I left for quite a few years and did TV producing for about 6-7 years, and then came back in, and I phoned up a friend who was an assistant director that I'd met back then, and I said, "Are you still working in the industry?" She said, "Yeah." I said, I don't want to sit at a desk anymore. Can I come and help out?" She said, "Yeah, come and help. I'm just starting National Treasure 2." So that was 2007, I guess, and started on that, helping out with the background on the car chase sequence around London. Which they used 10% of, and then just scrapped the rest. Shot it and lost it, strangely.
And so, when you first got back into it, what were you like a second or a second, or like, or do you not really have those kinds of titles?
I was at that point, I was just a crowd AD. It wasn't a third, a second, or anything. It was just a crowd AD that would come in, and they just needed people walking
just on those
on
bigger scenes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I've done a lot of.
So
can you can you describe what an AD, because I think people hear AD, assistant director, all the time. It's a very interesting job, and there are sort of many different tasks within that job, and people hear assistant director. It's very different than I always hear Dwight Schrute yelling to the it's not assistant to the director. It's actually actually a key job on the set. But you should explain what it is an assistant director does.
For thirds or floor seconds, you're on the set, working with the first AD, working with the director, just to make that set flow and to be the link between the first AD and all the departments, to make sure that all those cogs are going round in the right direction for the right outcome. So it's making sure that the right stuff is ready on set, to make sure the right cast are getting ready to come down. It's just making sure that everyone's kind of all at the same knowledge of what's going on, I guess.
Yeah, and it's like extreme logistics, like the amount of organization that goes on in a film set, and the first AD runs the floor, and sort of people imagine the director kind of calling the shots, and the director is doing that, but the director sits in a much more creative job where they're focusing on the performance and the shot that they're getting, all of the other stuff that's going on, making sure that the explosion is cued, and all that is kind of comes down to the various levels of the AD department that begins with the first AD and kind of goes on down from there. But it's the kind of job that I always look at, and I'm just like, it's amazing to me, working in the business, how many different wirings are required to make a film set run, and I am not at all wired for being an AD. Like, I don't have that level of like attention to detail.
It is logistics.
It's very funny though, because I do think
it's like being a chef. You've got to like turn on the the heat at the right time to
be able to like sort of, because it's not just the logistics of the day, but it's also the logistics of the entire shoot, the schedule, everything. And it is fascinating to me, the great ADs that I have met and gotten to know over the years. There's something genetic about it. They all sort of, there's a similarity of sort of the type of person, and like even a little bit sometimes like how they dress, and like there is a certain person that slots into the AD, certainly the first AD job, and I think other people obviously rise up through the AD ranks and then go off into producing and other aspects as well. But it is always very fascinating to me. The great first ADs that I've met, they are all somewhat similar in a very funny way. Anyway, I don't know why that makes me laugh.
Some of the firsts that I worked up the ranks with were people like Terry Madden. Terry Madden was the first AD on all the James Bond second unit. So all the action stuff pretty much from the early 80s up until I think it was one of the early Daniel Craig's. Michael Stevenson was another AD.
Legend.
He was AD on Lawrence of Arabia, The Shining. Just crazy to work with someone like that, to work under someone like that, and to see how they do it and make it look effortless is just incredible.
Lawrence of Arabia, amazing.
Yeah.
Just all cards on the table. Glenn and I actually worked together. Most recently, my first English production had Glen Carroll ADing. And it was fun. I would come on set every day and find some reason to talk about props and collecting instead of doing my job and keeping Glenn from doing his job.
Yeah.
So it really worked for everybody.
It was great. There'd be some stressful days where we'd sidle up next to each other by the monitor and say, "Hey, have you seen that catalog? Yeah. What are you interested in?
Yeah.
So many things. We'll talk later."
Yeah.
Glenn, what came first for you? The desire to be in the movie industry, the collecting? Did you get into the industry and then start getting interested in collect? Like where, or is it all sort of, they're kind of separate tracks?
My interest in working in the industry goes back to, I think it goes back to my dad, because my dad was a unit driver, just for a couple of years, but he was a unit driver on Full Metal Jacket and things like that. So Spies Like Us. So he'd be at home rarely during those two years, but you'd get phone calls to the home. And at the time, my grandparents were living with us, and you'd get a phone call to the home, and my grandmother would pick it up and say, "Hello? Yeah, who? There's a Dan Aykroyd wants to talk to you." It's Dan Aykroyd. It's like phoning up to see what time he's getting picked up. And it was crazy. But he took us to Pinewood one Sunday to have a walk around the set of Little Shop of Horrors. And we went past the stage that they were shooting Aliens, and there was the sign on the door saying, "Do not enter, aliens are in here," with a picture of the alien. Went straight through and just walked around the set of Little Shop of Horrors. So I would have been 11. And just walking around, going in Mushniks.
So it really just imprinted on you like that, yeah.
For sure. There was one moment actually walking down, and there's an alleyway that he walks down in Little Shop of Horrors, and it had this water running down the walls, the drains, and I remember touching that as an 11-year-old and going, "That's dry. That's not actually wet. That's blown my mind. That's made to look wet, but it's not wet." And that's always stayed with me as being just a moment of fascination with the industry of like, wow, this really is movie magic.
That's awesome. And so did your Little Shop of Horrors Clapper, did you track that down because of that experience, or are you actually a fan of the movie, or both?
I love the movie. My mum and dad took me to see it in the West End probably when I was 12. And they're the two films that I remember him taking us to see was Little Shop of Horrors and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. And both of those have just stayed with me. I love them for that reason.
Yeah.
But no, I bought that in an auction. I think it was a prop store auction, only a few years ago. Always looking for Little Shop of Horrors stuff. I love that movie. I love everything about it.
And in your prop collecting, I mean, I don't know, it's interesting because clappers do connect. Not exactly, it's not the first AD's job to hold the clapper, but there's something more production related to the clapper that at least, I don't know, I want to draw a line to the job you do. Did your prop collecting start bigger and then begin to focus in on like where do clapperboards come in, and like how do you now find yourself with that backdrop, I guess is what I'm asking in your collecting life? And are you still collecting other things? Sorry, a lot of questions. Yeah.
No. I still collect everything. I'm just one of those collectors that isn't as niche.
Not according to the guy at.
apparently. But I'm just always
You're a
looking
hoarder.
for.
You're a hoarder.
I am. Yeah. There's no denying it. Thanks, Ryan. I am a massive hoarder.
Just cutting through it.
Yeah.
So you're collecting other movie props. I mean, I know from chatting a bit, obviously, I know you collect like a lot of Wes Anderson stuff. I know that's a favorite of yours. Yeah. So you're collecting other movie props, but then a section of your collection is this clapperboard thing. And did the clapperboard thing start just with what is it? What attracts you to the clapperboard? What is it for you? Why clapperboards? Let's go there.
I think there's two things. I think the clapperboard is just the ultimate symbol of filmmaking. You see one and that's what it is. You can picture a cinema camera or the big stage lights that you see from the sort of 1940s movies. They also scream cinema, but there's something about a clapperboard that just is universal. That just says movie. I do collect everything else, but clapperboards is certainly an area. Wes Anderson is a big one. Clapperboards is another, and call sheets is another. So I think working in the industry, you see the relevance of the clapperboard and the call sheets so much more. So it just means a lot more to me. And it's just a fascination that I won't divert onto call sheets, but the interesting thing of call sheets is that nothing has essentially changed. You look at a call sheet from the 20s or 30s or 40s, and it still says the crew need to be here at this time, cast here for makeup and costume, make sure coffees and donuts are ready at this time. And it's just, nothing has changed. That piece of paper still does the job all these years later, albeit added loads more stuff to it.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Yeah.
Is there a agreed upon term? I know we always sort of call it clapperboard, but I feel like for a long time on sets, everybody calls it the slate. And I think that's specifically because of the data that it's communicating. So maybe that's more about the data on the clapperboard.
I always thought it was just the material, like it's a slate board that you can write on.
But they also
chalk.
refer to the electronic ones as slates. So I don't know. I mean, is what we call it as collectors different from what they call it on set? Because there's I've heard slate, clapper, clapboard is
all of them. They're all used.
Yeah, there you go.
They use slate, they use clapper, they use clapperboard. All of them. They just I don't think there's any specific term. It's all of those names.
And it has actually people sort of think lights, camera, action, but can you just talk about the very specific function that the board has in the making of a movie?
It's to tie in it's to tie in the sound and the visuals of the camera. So on the front of the clapperboard, here's one there. It'll tell you the scene, the takes, what scene you're shooting, how many takes, who the director is, the camera, the date. So all the information is there. And to sync the sound with the visuals, they would do that. So then the editor has all the information there, and they can just match up that exact moment with the visuals. So they
what was that board? I could not make out.
That's
the
a random one. That's Radiator Blues 2: The Revenge, which is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh wow! Okay, so I
got a selection of.
That was the Blue Harvest of its time, so to speak.
So exactly. I kind of figured we'd talk about things like that. So that's like working titles on boards is one thing.
Yeah, big
different
thing.
types of boards. So,
I like how Glenn's just let me just bring out this little thing I have here. It's a Prisoner of Azkaban board. It's not even on display. I'll just pull it out of my pile.
Like that little one there is another.
Oh, I love little boards.
Episode one. So that's an insert board. So the insert board is used for any of that stuff where if you're trying to shoot something much tighter, like someone writing a letter or something like that, they'd use a smaller board because trying to get a full massive board under the camera.
Because you'll see a number of board sizes up there, and there are different sizes based on the basically the lens size that you're using. So you can essentially just fit the thing in the frame.
Yeah,
so
I want one. Oh, okay. Go ahead. I do have one question.
This is they call these the comedy boards.
Oh, the big one.
Oh, I love them. Yeah, the novelty size. Those are the best.
So yeah.
And what was that one for? Does it have a?
That's for Hobbs and Shaw. Masterpiece.
Fantastic. Ours on House of the Dragon, our novelty board was so freaking big that it actually took 3 people to operate. So one person would hold up the board with the actual data on it, and then there was another pair on the other side because they couldn't. It was too big and unwieldy to attach the clap to the board, so they had 2 other people operating the clap, and they would just. It was basically just an alligator mouth detached from the board that they would just clink together. I love the novelties. I also love the teeny tiny board, like the one that actually looks like a Christmas tree ornament sort of sized one. Yeah, that has the little, you see them going with the.
And then there's those ones, the digiboard one, which is where they're kind of going now.
Yeah, which is
unfortunately
a bummer. That was
don't like those.
I never kept one from Colony for that reason, because they go digital, and then actually the board actually does the sync work for the digital card on the camera, right? So you don't have to, the editor does not have to manually line up sound with picture, because it clapping the thing numbers. Actually syncs it by number, which is just, it's cool technology, but it's just boring because it means you don't get a collectible at the end of it.
Look at that.
And the other thing I would say they're used for is really the editor. When the editor rolls through the footage, because get now with film and these big complex TV shows like we do, you get so many hours of dailies. I think we had one episode that had 95 hours of dailies just for one episode. Lots of pre and post roll. But it's the board appearing in the in frame that tells the editor what they're looking at in terms of the shot,
scene, and takes,
the piece of coverage that they're getting, the take number, because the script supervisor the whole way along, talk about another job that I'm totally unsuited for. A script supervisor is a fucking alien language to me. Watching them work, I don't know how they do it. I have nightmares where I wake up and my job on set is a script supervisor, and it's just me and my computer's on fire and everything is failing and there are lights falling out of the ceiling because the show cannot go on with me as a script supervisor. But they're writing down the whole way along as the director is turning them and say, that's a good take, print that one, as they're thinking about, kind of cutting the film in their head. So when the editor's kind of piecing together the director's cut or the assembly or whatever, they're looking for that thing in frame to help them track down that, that particular take, that angle, that whatever piece of coverage, that lens size, that thing. So this is what guides the kind of post-production process. So it has a very functional role, I would say, in the making of the film, even though you very rarely, actually you never see it on film because it's they cut it out.
I think like everything else,
behind the scenes
was
footage,
probably a lot.
Documentaries.
It was probably a lot more helpful when people were hand cutting, is my guess, on all of it. Just in terms of like the idea of syncing sound to picture and all of these things that I feel like, now everything's in like, separate computer bins and whatnot. But anyway, they're still wonderful, and I still wish they were wooden, and we'll get to all of that. I want to just I want to start with the really first question that has occurred to me, which, as I've been staring at all of your boards, what was your first board that you actually added? What was the first board that you ever sort of, I guess, purchased, assuming you didn't find a first board, I guess, on something either that your dad worked on that he brought home, or that you worked on something where you were able to keep a board? Because I guess for me, while I do have boards in my collection, I guess the earliest boards that I ever had were boards on things that I worked on or things that I wrote. That's where I started with my boards. But anyway, how about you? Where did you start?
Mine was a purchase. So I'll backtrack. I started collecting stuff on eBay, as a lot of people did around then. So I was buying the sort of $40, $50 things like which I still have. There's a lab coat from K-Pax that I don't know what I'm ever going to do with that. And then
I don't even think you can sell that. I'm literally not sure you can even sell it. Yeah,
can't anymore.
Dave, in 3 weeks we're doing our K-Pax episodes. So we're going to have Glenn back on.
Yeah. Excellent. And then
in the lab coat,
and then went to one of the UK
if
film
you
fairs.
Could have anything from K-Pax, we won't count lab coats. No one can say lab coats. What would you? No.
You actually made me think. Then I was like, shit, what is in K-Pax? And I went to a UK fair, and Prop Store were there, as with most people, and they had a Lord of the Rings.
They're everywhere.
Lord of the Rings clapperboard.
Oh wow!
And that was the first board I bought. As one of the first significant pieces I bought. Full stop. And again,
were they something you had?
I like how you have a Lord of the Rings board and it's not behind you, because it's not considered significant enough.
There are 2 boards of the boards that I've ever had that I've sold and have regretted ever since. Lord of the Rings was one of them.
Oh wow!
Lord of the Rings was one of them, and The Shining was the other. And I will never know why I sold The Shining. There was a reason to raise money for something else at the time, and that went into an auction
to get the K-Pax jacket.
That was it. Yeah. Or a patch. It was a patch.
You shouldn't have sold that Shining one for $40. That seems low, but okay. I mean, I guess if you needed,
it seemed good at the time, but I was drunk.
But if you do the future value of money and you consider how long ago he made that $40, I mean, it's worth as much as $65
the K-Pax thing is only going up.
Right now.
When you bought that first board, had you eyed boards previously? Like, were they on your mind as something to collect that you were fascinated by? Were you aware that you were interested, or was it that sort of time and place you saw it and you realized this is for me kind of a thing? Like,
I think I'd seen boards on different collector websites, whatever was around back then. Screen Used and Prop Store both had boards on, but I think that was the first significant one that I went, holy shit, that's a Lord of the Rings clapperboard. No, I don't think before then anything had really grabbed me boards wise. And now,
how quickly, once you got that Lord of the Rings one and you had it, and I know it's gone now, how quickly did you then get your second one? You know what I mean? Like, when did you start to realize, like, this is it for me?
It wasn't that quick, actually. No. I think the collecting boards has been something that's really kicked off only a few years ago. I would say probably only about 4 or 5 years ago. I have bought boards over the years before then, but never as regularly. And I think
the board insanity has kicked in more recently.
The board insanity has kicked in, and a big part of that is having worked around all these guys for so many years and getting to know them. Now that I am collecting them, I'm turning to these guys that have been in the industry since the 70s and 80s, and they're saying, "I've got a box of them in my shed."
Right.
I'd rather they went to someone that likes them rather than I've always intended to do something with them and haven't for 40 years. So I'd rather you have them. So
yeah. And your unique position working in the business, you meet these people, working on sets, you get to know them. They get to know you as a person, fellow crew member. And they see that, you're not mercenary about it. It actually is about love, except for with Shining boards. But,
yeah, but that wasn't from a crew member. I bought that from another collector, so I feel I can justify that.
There you go. Pass on. Do you know do you know where it is? Is it still with the person that sold it to?
It's sold. I think it's sold in Profiles. And I have approached them and said,
where is it?
Yeah. Where is it? Any chance of tracking it down? And they said they would try, and nothing more. So I'll give them another nudge.
Yeah, you should. Oh,
it's probably ended up with Lee Unkrich. I think Lee Unkrich probably has it in his Shining collection.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. In which case, it's in the right place,
and that's fine, right?
Yeah,
right.
There's something wonderful in just looking at your backdrop where we get to really see. I don't know if it's exactly the evolution of the boards, but they kind of went from the kind of chalk slate kind of writing on them, the kind of classic black ones, which I guess are my favorite, like the Aliens one I held up. I mean, I do love the look and feel of that. Then they kind of, as the kind of moved forward, we kind of got to the dry erase board kind of, I guess that was a little bit more of like late 80s into the 90s kind of a thing, but that sort of takes us up. And then obviously, as you said, into the digital ones. And the thing with the digital ones, that faceplate that you held up before, basically it's an electronic clapper, and you just Velcro on the different face boards, and that's kind of that's kind of the modern whatever. And I've been in the situation where I've actually just ended up buying the full guts, the full electronic clapper from like the sound guy, just because again, I'm talking about ones that are things I've worked on. So like, for example, on Veep, I just took the whole, I bought it, but I took the whole clapper from them because I didn't just want the faceplate. I mean, just in terms of the collecting world, but I don't know. I do love the classic black. I mean, that's, I guess in my head, when I think of, again, that sort of action moment in like an old movie or something, I think of the classic black ones. I love those. I love the different sizes. I love the small ones, the large ones and whatnot. I don't know. That's I just thinking about it as I'm staring.
they were the same. They were essentially the same for like, 60 years. Yeah. I mean, you find a Maltese Falcon slate and it's gonna look like the Alien one. That's the great thing about them. It's just they're timeless. That timeless design. And I think what makes them interesting, and Glenn has sort of hinted at it in his discussion, is these are not things that are kept really by the studio. These sort of go on to live with the camera department, with the sound guy. They're ephemera that really does escape set a lot, like chairbacks and scripts and things. So they're out there in a kind of legitimate way. I mean, the studio really, nobody's angry about it. Doesn't matter what movie it is. Nobody's really angry about a clapper coming up in auction, because it's sort of accepted that those things are going to be kept as mementos by the people that work on the film. So, whatever film that you're into, whatever you're looking for, if you're new to collecting, or if you want to collect these things specifically, chances are whatever your favorite movie is, that thing is somewhere out there in the wild. It doesn't have to be a thing that, slipped out the back door or got, fell off the back of a truck or anything like that, and makes them, I think, particularly interesting to collect.
Interesting. Nowadays, I'd say the past few years, they are now considered assets, and that sort of, it's quite hard. It's quite hard to get hold of boards now. The past few years, 4 or 5 years, I think they've really clamped down. They're all considered assets. So if you speak to the camera guys now, they're all like, "No, the production have said they need them all back when they finish."
So they're literally taking those Velcro tops, basically. Those
and the acrylic boards. A lot of them still use the acrylic boards.
Yeah, we used acrylic boards on.
I find that they'll have them, but they rarely use them. Like it'll exist for something, but I don't know. At least the stuff I've been working on lately, it's pretty fully electronic. Well, let's get into the collecting sort of part of the whole thing, because I think it's so fascinating. And I think one of the things that people need to understand, first of all, let's just pick a movie. Let's just start with any movie, whatever, is that first of all, for any movie, there's multiple boards. So let's start with multiple boards. The different cameras usually have the different cameras. Sometimes, certainly back in the day, one camera, but as time has gotten more complicated, more and more cameras, A camera, B camera, C camera, and then the units will often have them. So if you start getting into second units, third units and whatnot, or stunt units, whatever it is, driving units, whatever. And so from any given movie, I think one of the things that's really interesting, and I think some things are more collectible and less collectible, but still interesting, are the notion of, well, it's second unit, or, it's B camera, it's, whatever, it's an insert camera. Again, we were talking about these different things. In your collecting, are you always trying, for the most part, to get the main unit with the, if you will, the A camera, or maybe you don't care as much about A versus B camera, but are you trying to go for, in your collecting, the main unit camera? I guess let's start there.
Not particularly. If a great main unit A camera board comes up, that's fantastic, but not massively picky. A second unit is fine. I mean, a James Bond, you can't have James Bond boards now because they're all asseted. Right. But the older boards, if you got a James Bond second unit board, that's the board. That's the unit that did all the action. That's the ones that did the opening to the Bond film. So actually, a second unit or an action unit, James Bond clapper, is a great thing to have. It doesn't need to be the main unit one.
I do think especially in a James Bond movie, and you can think of other action movies, obviously the second unit would be incredible because obviously, as you put it, they are making it. I will say when I'm looking for clappers, and again, this is me, the thing about obviously the sort of the main unit, obviously, is you are getting, in most cases, the director and the main DP, the cinematographer's name on it, which is not to say it's a bad thing when you don't, but obviously, for example, if you get like a second unit on like Raiders, which is still obviously the wonderful in action and whatnot, but you're going to get other names. You're going to, exactly. Mickey Moore, which again, still Raiders. It's still great. It's still incredible, but
if the film rises to the occasion,
But I guess I do, I guess and again, beggars can't be choosers, but, and I think there are worlds of upgrading as well, but I guess I want the one that says Spielberg on it, just for me, especially if I'm going to spend the money. I guess let me talk about it that way a little bit. Yeah.
I was offered about 6 months ago. I was offered I got very excited because I said the subject of the email was Empire Strikes Back Clapper, and I got very excited and I opened it, and it was second unit. So it was what's his name, McDonald, Peter McDonald. Mm-hmm. Is that the second unit director? And I was very excited because Empire, and it's my favorite of the three, and I would just look, oh God, I would love to have something from Empire, and I would have taken it. The price was beyond first unit on most movies, and this was the second unit. And granted, it was Empire. I think it was entirely fairly priced, but at that level, I was just like, I would rather spend plus 50% and get a Kirsch board at some point down the line, and not have to then sell this one in order to justify buying that. So Dave and went through the agony with me as I always overthink everything, and then make Dave I talk about it three or four more times before I make a decision.
I don't give my real answer till like the third time. That way I keep it fresh.
He really
But no, it was just it was such a large
cat with a canary.
No, but it was such a large number at that point. And again, if someone was gifting it to you, you'd say thank you so much. This is incredible. I've got a second unit Empire board. But at a certain point when you're spending, and unfortunately, like everything else, Clappers, in some ways, to me, again, this is going back like 10 years where I was paying less attention to them. In some ways, I think we used to think of them sometimes a little bit as an introductory prop, and they are certainly on the bigger movies. That is no longer the case. I mean, they're not $100,000, but they are no longer. They're no longer cheap. They are no longer reasonable. They're no longer a starter prop. They are definitely, you are spending real money. And obviously on Star Wars and a couple of the ones like Star Wars, it's real money. And again, I think that becomes a thing that I think about the unit. I think about, is the director's name on it? Is the DP's name on it? Because I'm into both of those things, in some cases, especially the DP, it's like, if I don't have a Roger Deakins one, but if I did, wouldn't I want, that's cool, is your Miller's Crossing, is that Deakins? I can't remember.
It doesn't, no, Sonnenfeld.
Sonnenfeld, even cooler. Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep. So, but it's like, because it's like with that, it's like, well, Sonnenfeld, I want Sonnenfeld on. I mean, however you want to think about it. And, again, just that's what I'm associating with the names of the thing. Of course, though, as movie fans, like on a James Bond movie, in some cases, those action guys are as big names to me. And so it's thinking about it a little differently. And in some cases, boy, like on those earlier in the late 70s James Bond movies, wasn't John Glenn the second unit action guy before they actually made him the full-on director? He was then everything.
Cool to see too,
and that evolution of his career was kind of fascinating, which I don't know wherever that fits in, but that was kind of neat as well.
Yeah, because aren't there indie boards kind of late in the run that have Vic Armstrong as the second unit, the named director, or am I making that up in my head?
One, but that doesn't mean
maybe
certainly
Crystal,
possible.
Maybe Crystal Skull. Maybe Crystal Skull I'm thinking of. But I mean, Vic, doubled for Indy for a long. He's sort of a famous stunt guy, so even that in itself is cool to have a famous name on the board, and you can see the story of how the film evolves, or film history evolves over time. That's a big draw to me, honestly, is having the director's name on it. I mean, two of my, we'll get into favorite boards, but two of my favorite boards have like two of my favorite directors of all time. They happen to be two of my favorite movies, but also my favorite directors of all time. And man, isn't it cool to have a Steven Spielberg board in your collection? I mean, that's just great fun. His name is right there. Are you a fan of those old Hanna-Barbera cartoons? Well, PropStore's latest auction gives you a chance to recapture your youth and add some great pieces of animation art to your collection to help a worthy cause. The Takamoto Foundation online charity auction is taking place now through April 4th, 2023, and it includes over 140 lots of signed animation art, hand-drawn sketches, and other Hanna-Barbera ephemera from the personal collection of artist Iwao Takamoto, who passed away in 2007. The Takamoto Foundation is carrying forward Takamoto's wish to give back by selling art from his collection to benefit talented student artists at Ringling College. Proceeds from this auction will fund the Iwao Takamoto Scholarship at Ringling College, which is located in Sarasota, Florida. Takamoto, who's a second-generation Japanese American, grew up in the Los Angeles area during the World War II era and joined Disney after the war, where he was responsible for animating The Lady in Lady and the Tramp. And then in the 1960s, he was one of the early animators at Hanna-Barbera, designing characters such as Scooby-Doo, Astro, The Great Gazoo, Penelope Pitstop, and the Spider from Charlotte's Web. This auction includes many rare versions of limited edition cells and lithographs Takamoto designed for Warner Brothers. Stores in the 1990s, many... let me try that again. This auction includes many rare versions of the limited edition cells and lithographs Takamoto designed for Warner Brothers stores in the 1990s, and many hand-drawn sketches of different Hanna-Barbera characters by Takamoto and personal effects, including industry awards and letters to Takamoto from the White House. So go to propstore.com right now to view the catalog and bid. And don't forget to use your discount code Dave10 or Ryan10 to get 10% off your buy now order through the end of the season, and vote for your favorite Stuff the Dreams Are Made Of podcast host at the same time, because Condal's going for the three-peat.
The other thing that you brought up a little bit with the Azkaban one is the title. And there's sort of two things that I think also that just, again, if you're new to board collecting, things to think about, which is one is sometimes these movies obviously shot under, different names. So for example, that had a code name. Obviously Blue Harvest is a famous code name.
Right.
A lot of the Marvel movies, I think, shoot under code names. Your episode 1 behind you there over your shoulder just says episode 1. I don't know. Maybe they didn't have a title at that. I don't remember when they came up with the title, The Force Awakens, in the process. Maybe they did, and we're just kind of keeping it secret because the title wasn't known.
Called Avco when it shot. So I think that the boards would have Avco on them.
There was Avco too.
Oh, yeah,
okay,
that one's Phantom Menace.
Oh, Phantom Menace. I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh. That's
Yeah,
even worse, Glenn.
Episode
That's even worse. I was sort of vaguely holding my nose on Force Awakens, but dear Lord, my God,
that's even more niche than Dave thought.
Yeah, that is niche.
Do you want to see my Ewoks Caravan of Courage board?
See, that actually is more interesting to me if you want to pull that out. But
is that one actually covered in fur? Did they do
the back?
Yeah.
But where I was going with it was, one thing that has sort of hit me a couple of times, like you brought up The Alien, which obviously became Alien. There was a clapper that was for sale a couple of months ago, and for all I know, you ended up buying it. It was an Excalibur clapper, but at the time, it was not called Excalibur. It was called, was it Merlin or something like that? Yeah. And I have to admit, I didn't buy it because, I don't know, I guess I did not know it had been called Merlin, and because I didn't know it, it was not part of my sort of brain. I don't know. It was less interesting to me. Whereas I will tell you, I have in my collection, I have an ET clapper that we'll put a picture of.
I was just going to bring that up.
And I have that, and it's A Boy's Life, or The Boy's Life, or A Boy's Life, somebody's life, but Boy's Life. And that doesn't bother me in the same way because I guess I knew that title from my knowledge of the history of the making of E.T. So obviously, I guess it's what you individually bring to it. But I guess I do prefer the times when the title is the title. I guess is where I'm talking about my own collecting preferences. Yeah.
I would actively seek out a Blue Harvest.
Yes, that
board
being,
to have
of course,
it.
The
I also think
accepted.
Revenge of the Jedi is a great board too. I had that's probably my close but no cigar story. Is I had one of those. It was in my grasp and it like went through it like sand. It was like, the buyer passed. Would you like it? Yes, I would. The buyer has now unpassed and is buying. It was the most frustrating. I was all excited to just drive to the valley and pick that thing up, and it went to dust in my hands. Revenge of the Jedi, but I would love a Blue Harvest because that's probably the most well-known fake movie title of all time. I mean, right?
Yeah. Blue Harvest. In my collection, I have ones from all the Star Wars movies. I have a couple of sizes. I have on Empire, they made small clappers for being inside the X-wing, like in the for the cockpit shot. Like that would be the little one that like Mark Hamill could kind of keep under his exactly, and kind of come up and do it himself. Exactly. We would use small ones sometimes, or smaller ones like for driving shots, like on Curb Your Enthusiasm, because like if we were like towing the car, like Larry or whoever could kind of hold it up and kind of do a clap like that. But anyway, so I have a small like X-wing, I don't know, again, like insert one, whatever. I don't have a Blue Harvest, and that definitely is for me. That's one I'd love to get. I missed out on one a couple of years ago that I think Gus Lopez ended up with, I believe is where it ended up. But there was something else in that auction that I had to have, and I went with that over the Blue Harvest, thinking, of course, there'll be more Blue Harvests, and here we sit, and Blue Harvest lists. But yeah,
no Harvest.
Yeah, no Harvest.
I'm still sitting waiting to get an original Star Wars trilogy or original Indy trilogy board at some point, one day.
Would you think about like a Mickey Moore one, or would you hold out for the Spielberg? You would. Okay. No, just curious.
Yeah, totally.
No,
totally.
Just wondering what you're looking for. Do you have is it possible to say to you, do you have a favorite, or are we beyond that, or some of your favorites, or so many different categories?
Of the boards I have.
Yeah.
Or in general. I think Alien it just does it for me. I love the movie. So yeah. And that's a crazy story. A crew member that had it sold it at a car boot fair. Like, I think it was about 10, 15 years ago, just didn't want it, took it to a car boot fair. And another crew member's mother just happened to be at the car boot fair, and she bought it, took it home, and it was with their family. And the crew member whose mum bought it, I just happened to work with him. He said, "Oh yeah, the board that my mum bought from so-and-so at a car boot fair."
So she bought it like for her son because her son had worked on the movie and thought he would get like a kick out of it?
No, her son was too young at the time. I think she bought it just because it was maybe of interest, because her son was interested in getting into the film industry.
Oh God, that's hilarious.
And just crazy. It sort of went from a crew member out into the wild and then came back in pretty much straight away.
That's great.
That's hilarious.
There is an original Star Wars, like A New Hope, meaning Star Wars board out there, but there's only one, right? Wasn't that the story with that movie? They only had one on the movie, or there's only one that survived, or something like that. I've
heard different stories over the years. I've been trying to track one down. I met a guy that 100% had a New Hope board, and that famous story, his son took it into school to show it off, and it never came back.
Oh, Lord.
And at the time, they didn't really care that much, and that's he's a crew member who's worked in the industry since the 60s. He's got everything else except that. That was the one thing that was taken in. And some other kid's gone, that beats my Greedo figure.
Yeah,
I'll have
but
that.
in theory, that's still out there, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Dave, do you have anything original Star Wars?
Nothing from Star Wars, Empire, Jedi, those.
Well, what's your favorite?
Oh boy. I guess my Empire is probably my favorite for all the reasons, you can think. They're not new reasons. It's just pretty great. It's probably my favorite. I have, I don't have that many. I have a couple, I have, like I said, I have the Star Wars ones. I've got, I'm literally, as we're sitting here, I'm looking through my my photos of what I have. I have a fun one. I have a Rocketeer one that I got from Joe Johnston a number of years ago. That's kind of a fun one.
That's cool.
I have the ET one that I mentioned, The Boy's Life. Revenge. I have my Jedi is a Revenge of the Jedi, which I love.
That's great.
I have I have a large, and then like I said, the small Empires, which I also really dig. I'm trying to think what else. I also have, they were not exactly clappers, but they kind of made like sort of papers. They're not even clappers. They were just sort of for some of the effect shots on like with like the forgive me, with the AT-ATs and stuff, like Phil Tippett, they just made like pieces of paper that they would sort of stick in front of the camera to kind of give the information. This is scene whatever, shot whatever. So
there's no
yeah,
sound
exactly.
sync,
So not exactly a clapper, but clapper-esque, I guess.
That counts.
Yeah.
That's
they got
empire.
Close Encounters
Yeah.
ones like that. The paper Close Encounters boards. It's just an A4 sheet of paper with Close Encounters written at the top.
But that's kind of wonderful. I mean, in its own weird way. I mean, again, that's what I like about it, is, you know, as well. I'm trying to think what else I have. What do I have? I'm looking through my list. I know this is so insane. I have, the heck's my indie one? I'm trying to figure out what I have. I have something indie.
You have a Raiders one.
I have a Raiders one, and I'm trying to remember if I have a second one as well, but I don't think I do. I don't think so. I have a Raiders one with Spielberg on it. And I don't think, I thought I had a Temple of Doom, but I don't.
Good.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy with it. Very happy with it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I think that's it. I'm sure I'm forgetting like something, but that's basically what I have. And now Aliens. So that's not bad.
That's
so,
an awesome board. The Aliens.
Yeah,
one. Well, all of those
great.
are.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I do love. I mean, for all the same reasons, you know, there's something about. Yeah, you don't see them on screen, but there's so much about the making of that I love. And, you know, again, some of the same stuff, I guess. I don't know, part of it working in the industry and whatnot, but also just the process, I guess, that I'm just obsessed with.
But that's the thing. I mean, you know, you don't see them on screen, but you do. I mean, my favorite board is my Blade Runner. I have a B camera board from Blade Runner, which is B camera, but it's Ridley Scott and Justin Cronenweth, and it's an early acrylic board with the gaffer's tape to make the letter B, and you can actually match it up to Charlie de Lauzirika's Dangerous Days. You see it in, you know, in stark relief in that film, which is now, it's one of those, Blade Runners are famous enough films, so the making of Blade Runner film Dangerous Days is also famous, so you see it's screen matched. I mean, it is to a known making of film, and I think we've come to that level where you know, high definition stuff has come along far enough that you can actually match these things. A lot of boards will match, you know, photo match.
Yeah, I feel like I have definitely a lot of good production photos where more often than not you can sort of see some of the boards I have, which I do love that match. And then look, let's face facts. Unfortunately, like everything else, as things are kind of going crazy in price, there have been boards that we've all questioned, you know, boards that are a little too clean, that clearly have things printed on them that aren't supposed to be there. And just, I mean, again, I don't know how else you can say it, but it's like, you know, again, you're talking about, you know, a piece of, you know, whatever, wood and slate and whatnot. It's not the hardest thing in the world to fake. It wasn't probably worth faking when they cost a couple $100, but now that things are selling for multiple thousands, it's an unfortunate thing. Yeah.
And sadly, there are now replicas being made, not to be fakes, but replicas to be made because, this famous, you know, Raiders of the Lost Ark board or Star Wars board, and somebody makes a replica with all of the weathering and everything on it from the famous behind the scenes photo. And it does get a little muddy.
But even forgetting about the replicas,
it's
it's also often a sort of a crew gift, which is to say at the end of a production, you're kind of given sort of a board that is a board, but isn't it's not a used board. It's, you know, often sometimes like a, you know, it'll be like a plastic one. It's a gift board and everything will be kind of, inscribed into it. Like, so it's not like handwriting because they want it to look good, and those things circle around as well. And of course, people that don't know what it is, so you're seeing sort of, again, was it a gift from the production? Absolutely. Was it scene 7 action? No, it's not. And I do think, you know, again, if you're new to board collecting, you need to be aware of all of these things.
Those things exist.
Exactly. Exactly.
And there's this other wrinkle too, where there are some boards that are made because, you know, camera department basically orders a bunch of these things and then makes it. So there are boards that were ordered at the time and then just never got used for one reason or another. They didn't use that lens size. They used here we go. Aliens. Here's a story for you. So the the DP on Aliens that started that film did not make it to the end. It was a rare fired crew member on a James Cameron movie, and he got canned a couple weeks into the production. That Cameron, and he was an old school UK film director, wasn't getting along with the young upstart American, so he got fired, and then they replaced him with Adrian Biddle, who's on Dave's board. So there actually are Aliens boards that say J. Cameron on it, that have another DOP's name, that are legit, that were used in the film. And I don't know, is that more interesting? Is that like the misprint baseball card, where you want the misprint baseball card, or you want the regular printed one? Which one is rarer? I mean, certainly the Adrian Biddle boards would be more popular, but I think I would rather have the DOP that shot the film on it versus the other guy. And it doesn't mean the other one's not real or legit or anything. And I think Aliens is an interesting enough film that, again, you would be happy to have.
I only want the other guy on my board if it's also a scene that had the other guy playing Hicks too. If it's like both.
Oh, it's like James Remar.
Yeah, James Remar scene, or James Remar screen test with the other DP. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
I've got a board for Enemy Mine, and it's got the director down as Richard Longcrane, and he shot for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. And then they didn't like what he was making. They got rid of him, and then
director. So, that's fascinating. I think
that's good. Is it valuable? No, but as a piece of history for the making of the movie, I think it's great. It just shows that
Tombstone.
Stage.
That would be a great one, Dave. Tombstone, the Kevin Jar board.
Week 2 around? Board. Yeah, I don't know. There's something about the whole I mean, again, the fire director, the fire DP. I guess as long as they shot, I do think it is part of the story. I guess I feel like I can make my peace with that in kind of a good way. There's also a couple of famous, just to talk about, boards in general. There are things like the Jaws board. There's the famous shot of Steven Spielberg, the board with the teeth in it, of which one came up for sale and then another came up for sale, and we'll just kind of,
for the first time ever,
we'll leave that where we are there.
And then for the second time ever.
But that board was pretty darn neat. And I've seen a couple other sort of, I don't know what's the word, bespoke boards that are kind of interesting. Nothing I've ever owned, but certainly kind of fun and interesting. Just, again, a sense of, people having fun with it, I guess. Also, things sort of taped, like various like stickers or things, or sometimes, I don't know, people's names or things like stuck to the top of the board, or googly eyes and various things of that nature, that I think give a sense of, beyond just the tape and the other interesting information on it, that sort of speak to the production and maybe the fun of the film set or whatever. What
was going on at the time. Yeah. I mean, my Princess Bride board actually has sometimes they'll put the, the scene location and sort of masking tape, across the bottom. And my day has been taped over with night. So there's like a double layer of masking tape. And I was always wondering, did they shoot the scene twice? Did they decide later on? Did they run out of daylight and it became a night scene? I was always fascinated with the story of that, but it does, those are the best ones, the one that still have whatever scene information, on it. Because
sometimes on the back, you'll get one where they pulled tape off, but they just stick it onto the back. I guess if they thought they were coming back to a place or something. And so you will just get a cool board, and on the back, it'll have like really a whole bunch of the different, like whatever locations and whatnot from. Go ahead.
I was going to say a lot of the wooden boards have stuff on the back. They've got tape remnants of different numbers, different letters where they would change, what camera they were using. There's just a whole host of stuff on the back, which is great. That's the part that the replicas or the all these reproers don't get to see. So I
don't have
keep those to yourself for sure.
My my Batman board, which you can probably see sort of in the frame there, has the A camera, the gaffer's tape, marked off on the back. So it was an A camera. Now they tend to put it the newer boards, the white, the dry erase boards tend to put the camera information on the front. So it'll have a little camera marker, tell you which camera. Now that multi-camera productions are more more popular C cameras and B cameras and D cameras. And then we had 2 units running. So we had on House of the Dragon, so we had boards with like G camera, because they had to track. It wasn't that they had 6 cameras on that one set, but they had 6 cameras running that day, so they had to track the different dailies through that day of production.
By the way, we did, when we got to the final season of Veep, the finale episode, which I directed, we got to, when we did the convention part of the show, which is the whole thing takes place at the convention, but the convention part, boy, we were running, I think, 6 or 7 cameras, because we had cameras pretending to be the television cameras. Then we also had sort of the Veep cameras beyond that. So, you had sort of like the TV cameras doing the coverage of the convention the way you would like watch it at home on television. But then also beyond that, we had cameras. And that would happen sometimes when we did like debates and things of that nature. And so, yeah, we were, we'd be running a whole bunch of units, which was just always, I don't know, again, just sort of the scope was always very fun, let alone the clappers. But again, if you knew you were getting an H clapper from a really important scene in a cool movie, I don't know. I think that'd be kind of cool, knowing, oh my God, this is from the finale or whatever it would be, and I've got X cam or whatever. So yeah,
I was just wondering, do the Marine helmet cameras and Aliens have little slates running for them?
Go.
Yeah. So this is something that sort of fascinated me too, which I think is a thing that's interesting about these boards, is collecting by director. And that's one of my biggest regrets. It's just so stupid. I mean, the reasons you pass on things, and whatever, you can't dwell on it for too long, but a Conan board came up, probably 5 years ago, and I have this, fairly noted, talked about a lot, Conan collection. I have basically everything comes along, and that board came up, and I was like, that's like $2,000 too expensive. And I passed on it. And like John Milius is like my fucking hero as like writer director.
No, it's good that you drew a line in the sand.
Yeah, it's important to stick to your principles, and then blow them on some garbage later that you buy in the same auction. But like, it was just this thing, and it was like, I think I was just thinking of it as a Conan board. And I just don't think that, because it was early on before I probably maybe had one, but now I have a bunch, and it was before all that. I just don't think I did the math of like, it says John Milius, like it says your hero's name on the board. Buy the fucking board, and it has it's not like John Milius Flight of the Intruder. It's John Milius Conan. It was just so dumb, intensely dumb. So if you're listening to this podcast and you have a John Milius Conan board, please call me, because now I will overpay for it. I will
wait a second. Is this the
hold on
future value of money? Yeah, Glenn.
No,
let's
sorry,
make it happen.
Glenn,
but no, that was getting me around to like, I just, as a film fan, there are certain directors I think out there, like a John Huston. Maltese Falcon would be great. Treasure of the Sierra Madre would be great. I would just love to have a John Huston board. Whatever, I don't even care about the film. I would just love to have a board from a film that he made. And I think that's a kind of unique sort of facet of this.
I was going to say, and this maybe connects that a little bit too, is especially when you're talking about guys that direct movies that perhaps are not, for me at least, prop heavy, you know what I mean? Where like, it's like, what do you want from that movie? Again, like something like, again, I'm just talking about movies we've talked about before, but like The Godfather, don't get me wrong, I'd be interested in certain things from the movie, prop wise or costume wise. But if you said to me, and again, I'm making this up, a Marlon Brando, suit that the Godfather wears, just in a scene, just a regular scene that he just wears a suit. Or you said to me, here is a clapper that has like Coppola and Gordon Willis's name on it. I'll take that clapper. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to name something from The Godfather that I'd want almost as much as that clapper conceptual. I'm just, and I think I can name a lot of movies like that where the clapper, I can't, it's hard for me to think of something that I would want almost as much. I don't know. There are a lot of movies where, don't get me wrong, with like a Star Wars movie, I definitely started with props and then thought, wouldn't it be great to have a clap, or whatever it is, not the Star Wars movie, but Empire, have a clapper. But a lot of these movies, boy, give me the clapper any day of the week. It'd just be really
a Godfather
fun.
board came up last year, didn't it? That was, I think it was withdrawn fairly quickly. Yeah, there was a Godfather and a Wizard of Oz one.
Yeah, and they left very quickly, and we never really got an explanation. I'm not even sure I got a chance to rev my engine. You know what I mean? It disappeared very quickly. Yeah. And sort of strangely. So I don't know what the story was.
Well, I mean, that brings up a good question. I mean, what, you guys have been, following this a little bit longer than I have. I've seen some great things come through from great movies. I mean, what's the, obviously The Shining, Glenn, but aside from The Shining, I mean, what's the best thing you've ever seen out there?
That I've ever seen? Oh, geez. It's going back to what we said is the Jaws board. The Jaws board is just...
Oh, yeah? Although the funny thing is, they talked about this somewhere, which is, I guess, that thing was sort of a pain in the ass to use. So it was, I guess, somewhat more, not ceremonial,
2 days in.
Yeah, it was just like, that wasn't in every scene because it was sort of like, I think they kind of pulled it out from time to time, but I don't care. Yeah.
Dave, are you saying the shark board was not working as well?
It worked, just not
problematic.
Exactly.
Shark,
yeah, exactly.
Bruce.
But I would still take it. It's the best one I've ever seen just because it was so damn unique. I mean, I wish I had other great examples, but it really was the best. That Godfather one, assuming it was real, did look pretty incredible. Again, you're getting into, I don't know, it's funny, and again, as these guys do pass away and, the things that they worked on, it's like, I don't know, I'm never sure I've ever seen a clapper anywhere that had like Gordon Willis's name on it, just to name a great DP. And maybe it's out there, maybe they're out there, maybe they've sold privately or whatnot, but you still start getting into these incredible movies, these name directors, name DPs. I don't know whatever happened to them, or maybe they'll come onto the market someday or into auction someday. I guess we just don't have that answer. As you said, a lot of sheds and whatnot that have boxes with them. So
and I think this is actually a mature for our very immature hobby in terms of just, length of time and it's still kind of coalescing and forming. I think this is somewhat a mature collectible within this. And I think there are probably a lot of kind of old school board collections that are out there for one reason or another. This was just the ephemera they took home from set that will shake out of the trees because people pass on whatever sooner than like movie prop collections.
In the world of collecting, I feel like, Glenn, there are fewer folks such as yourself that have just such a full-on board collection, and maybe perhaps closer to like, I guess what Ryan and I are sort of doing, which is to say, grabbing the board of a movie that we have some props from already to kind of put the little cherry on the top of our collection to display, here is my Empire prop with my Empire board. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but often for me, at least, thinking about the board as part of a collection as opposed to a collection unto itself. Although you do wake up one day and realize, oh, I guess it is kind of a collection also. But I don't know if that makes some sense somewhere in there.
I suppose there's a big part of the boards, especially with the guys that have them in the shed, that is, if I don't take them and look after them, there's a very good chance that shed will be cleared out when that person passes and they're gone. So I would say whether it's
preservation,
B-cam, exactly, B-cam, C-cam, second unit, action unit. To me, it's just rescuing these things that, the condition of some of them that have come out of sheds have been in sheds covered in cobwebs, rusted at the hinges, and you just think, a few more years and they're gone.
Yeah,
I know the rust is kind of cool though, but
no, it's all part of the story. I mean, I was gonna two questions. I was gonna move on because we always have to end on Holy Grails, the topic we love to talk about on this podcast. But I was going to ask, Glenn, you're such a huge Wes Anderson fan. I don't see any behind you. Does that mean that you don't have a Wes Anderson board?
I don't have a Wes Anderson board.
That?
I do not.
Do those all get kind of clamped down, locked down because of the Wes verse, or what's the story there?
Some of the crew that I've spoken to are I wouldn't say loyal, but these are going to Wes, and Wes has a massive collection of stuff from his movies. He has an archive himself of costumes, props, all of that stuff. So it's actually quite hard to find stuff that he doesn't already have locked away.
I'm not sure I've ever seen a photo of any of them. I feel like they should be very bespoke. Like they're like there should be like a
They're tweed themselves.
Yeah, they should be like a clapper that like the roof of the Grand Budapest Hotel like claps down on the clapper.
Opens up like that.
Yeah, exactly. Very proscenium style. No, does that not exist?
It's animated. Yeah, no,
these are all good ideas. So, have you seen them? I mean, have you seen
I've got
photos of?
I've got a recollection of seeing a photo from one of his films, and it might be Tenenbaums, or it might be Life Aquatic. I think it's Life Aquatic, where it's just got a handwritten tape on the front, and they've just handwritten it, which was quite surprising to see, because it's probably been, if he hasn't kept it, that's probably been reused.
Right.
Which is heartbreaking.
Right. Yeah. Well, so, I mean, what beyond, I mean, I imagine Wes Anderson would be high on your list, but what, if you, any film that you could have a legit,
and we'll skip
from.
Raiders and Star Wars and
just
consider those givens. But like, what would be like the dream? What would be some dream films if you could have a clapper from?
I'd love a board from the Hudsucker Proxy, Coen Brothers. I love that movie. I'd love a board, and I know I'll never find it, from the 1955 Lady Killers, the one with Alec Guinness.
Oh, wow.
The Ealing comedy.
Yeah, I was about to say, not a lot of Ealing comedy boards popping up. I mean, I have a passport to Pimlico if you're interested in that, but...
So I've got one.
No, those things are kind of a dime a dozen. Those are like Thor 2 hammers. Everyone's got a passport to Pimlico one. Yeah.
Everywhere. I mean, I'd ask you a question. A lot of the older boards would have just the production number written at the top as opposed to the title of the movie. Would that still interest you for something from, say, the 40s or the 50s if it just had the production number?
Oh, it would for me, for sure.
I would. I mean, especially if I could match, with a picture, it would be nice to know, or I'd probably want to pair it with some kind of maybe studio documentation to like whatever, but I think it would be...
But does it say Michael Curtiz
on it?
Well, no,
but I mean, that's the thing is like, what is it?
Warner Brothers production, whatever.
What's the famous, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the name, but wasn't Citizen Kane, whatever, it's like RK 20291 or 201 or one of those. There was a title, wasn't there a making of or some like movie that was called RKO 281 291? Anyway, if you give me a Citizen Kane, it doesn't say Citizen Kane, it says RKO 281. Yeah, okay, I can live in that world. But
I think that
I probably would definitely go less deep there. I mean, I'm not sure I would, again, but it's like, yeah, sure, if that's what the Maltese Falcon said, then that's what the Maltese Falcon said. That's what the Big Sleep said. That's what the Big Sleep said. I don't know. I'd be I don't know. Again, on a case by case basis. I feel like, I don't know. I'm way more curious about like, I don't know why, I guess like 70s. I just would love to find like this sort of 70s, like, I mean, like I said, I mentioned Gordon Willis before, just because that's a guy I just think of, like playing with like, darkness and shadows so much that I it's like, I don't know every cinematographer's name in the world. I know his name, but boy, it'd be fun to have like some of those, just, I don't know. I think of those great 70s movies would just be very fun to have, like
All the President's Men
would be incredible. But that same 3 Days of the Condor, Network, any of those, I don't know why that's where my brain goes in terms of things that it would be fun to have. Yeah.
I've never seen them.
I mean, I go to Hitchcock. I would love to have a Hitchcock, and
anything, even if the title wasn't the title, that would be okay too.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Don't care.
I agree.
Yeah. And also like, give me family plot. It's like, it's a Hitchcock board. I'd rather have Rear Window, but I just think that would be cool. And that was because we kind of played the game. I was going to do the whole, like, we've done movies about movies on this podcast, but like, a movie where the thing you would want is the clapper, and I think we've sort of come around to that. But I mean, I think for me, it's like it's sort of director based in these movies that are just essentially interesting movies with people in suits. I mean, All the President's Men. I mean, what would be better from that movie? Maybe one of the newspapers or something like that. But
even that, there were probably 100 of those. I mean, I'm just saying there probably were a lot of those, and I don't know. The clapper's the clapper. But I mean, it's funny, that you did, and you mentioned call sheets earlier too, and we've talked a little bit about call sheets, you and I privately. I think I like them for sort of similar reasons. I mean, both the connection to the making of, but also, obviously, in the case of call sheets, maybe not on older movies, but in theory, at one point or another, there were 100 or 200 of them. They were given out to everybody. They should exist, perhaps more. Obviously, people didn't all keep them and whatnot, but each call sheet, much like a clapper, especially if it has writing on it, just sort of drawing you into a very specific movie, a very specific scene, and often from a movie that maybe doesn't even have anything really great prop wise. I mean, again, it's that connection to the making of that I do love. I don't know, maybe that sums it all up somehow.
Yeah.
Movies that you're dying for. Again, not the Raiders, not whatever, but like, is there do you have a favorite movie that like you just would have to like gun to your head, like you'd kill for, kind of one?
It's the classic Hollywood. It's the classic vintage Hollywood Wizard of Oz. I'd love anything from It's a Wonderful Life, whether it's a board, a costume. I'd love his football top.
So those are the films that would do it for you. Okay, so that would be the dream. Okay, yeah.
I think so. You Maltese Falcon, any of those classic Hollywood that few and far between. I don't recall seeing any.
I don't recall seeing them. I don't recall seeing them even when I've taken things like the Warner Brothers tour. I don't think the Academy has things like that. Yeah. And those things just may be like gone or don't exist. Or again, they're in someone's shed. Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia, has that ever been around?
Don't recall seeing it.
Yeah. No. I figured they had so many cameras on that thing, cover those crazy desert battles. You'd figure lots of clappers out and about.
You're going to comb the desert like they do with the Star Wars.
Yeah, there you go.
Try and find.
They just left the clappers. They buried.
I was thinking
they buried them all.
A sea of boards.
Yeah, man, we ain't found shit. Yeah, I mean, the hunt continues. I mean, I think that's one of the cool things that, now that our little hobby here is getting more and more insane. I think every auction that comes along, you see a great board in it. I mean, that's the fun thing. And then you have these little things like Bottoms. That was a totally unexpected thing. The Adrian Biddle collection just popped up in Bottoms, and there was just a huge range of really cool, fun titles in there. And it was just neat. I mean, it's a neat way to, keep collecting alive now that prices have gone crazy. I mean, clappers are much more expensive than they were, but they're still, in terms of this hobby and for what they are, I think still a fairly reasonable thing to hunt down.
In the grand scheme of things, because I will say in that auction, one of the reasons I sort of was able to sort of focus in and I guess be able to get one, as long as it took for me to get it, was the fact that it was not particularly a strong auction for anything else. And I don't mean I was buying just to buy, but it allowed me to concentrate on something where I wasn't thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm about to write a check for $100,000 for X, where it was just sort of like, this is the thing I want and there's nothing else competing with it. This is what I truly want, as opposed to, unfortunately, seeing a nice clapper in a catalog on, day one, where I'm nervously waiting for whatever, the end of the day to bid, or whatever on something, that's going to go crazy. Obviously, we all make choices. But that was the one nice thing about this auction. I don't know, from my perspective, it was the best thing in the auction. I mean, that collection really, it shined in that auction without much competition, which was nice.
Yeah.
All righty. I'm not sure I have anything else.
Well,
we managed to fill.
That's a show.
That's a show.
There you go.
Should we play the game?
We should do tail sticks on this one.
Do we play the game? We sort of played it, but we kind of played it a little bit. I don't know.
Glenn, can you do tail sticks for us? So tail
Which
sticks
one are you choosing?
Is when you forget to do the beginning of the
upside down,
the novelty side. So when you forget to do it at the top of the cut, and when you do it at the end of the cut, you do it upside down.
You have to, if you're doing tail sticks, it has to. I mean, it has to be with Hobbs and Shaw, though. It has to. That's actually like a union rule. But,
only Hobbs and Shaw, and that was perfectly sized for your lens size there, Glenn.
Shame to finish the show on that.
My game was we sort of did this. We can do another round, sure. I was going to say we've done movies about movies because this is movie making. We've done the which your favorite movie about moving movies, The Player, Sunset Boulevard. But I think the game here is what's the movie where the thing you would want is the clapper.
K-Pax?
Like the thing that
am I allowed to say K-Pax?
It's a toss-up between K-Pax and Road to Wellville.
I'm a lab coat guy, Dave. I don't know.
From any period?
Yeah.
Aside from, I've already mentioned Wizard of Oz and It's a Wonderful Life. I'd love, and I don't even know what's written on the boards. I'd love an Laurel and Hardy board.
Oh, there you go.
Would blow my mind if one of those still existed and it had anything relevant written on it other than a production number, which it probably just does.
I was about to say those things were churning those movies out. You know, when you think about like the old like Max Sennett and those houses, I don't know, they were churning. You wonder if like they even like stop. Yeah, if they even like it was like probably one clapper for 80 movies. Or
that's chalk too,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, just erase. Yeah.
Yeah, just something that was used on a Laurel and Hardy set would just be incredible.
Yeah, Dave.
I mean, it made me think about some of those same kind of movies. I mean, I was sort of thinking about like the Abbott and Costello stuff and whatever, just because at least those were like, you know, bigger movies that maybe they had a clapper all their own, you know, or even like the Road 2 movies with like Bob Hope and Bing Crosby, like that. Maybe they had like nicer clappers. Like, I don't know, that kind of stuff would just be insane. Because again, it is that combination of like, I don't even know what I would want from one of those movies otherwise, but also just the idea that somehow a clapper survived from like The Road to Bali or something would be just kind of wonderfully insane. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I go to directors. I go to like, like the Wild Bunch. Like, how cool would it be to have like a Sam Peckinpah board? And like, I love the Wild Bunch. And you think, oh yeah, it would be great to have like a gun or a vest. But like, would you ever recognize anything from that movie? But the board would be awesome. And, you know, I imagine that thing existed. That was kind of a big budget, you know, Warner Brothers film at the time. You know, that thing would be great. I think it's just the great directors, like a William Wyler, like a Roman Holiday board, or, you know, just something like that. George Stevens board, you know, so,
The Odd Couple, actually.
What's that?
The Odd Couple would be a great one to have. I'd love that.
There you go. Yeah. John Ford.
I was going to say,
any John Ford.
Anything that said Billy Wilder on it would be mad.
Yeah, there you go.
Madness.
There you go.
Just something like
pure madness. Yeah, I mean, pure madness. But I mean, I don't even remember seeing those. Like Billy Wilder, like auctioned off his stuff at the end of his life or whatever. He did multiple auctions. He had an art collection too, but I think they auctioned off a bunch of stuff. I don't think there were any clappers. I've seen some of the stuff. I don't think there were. It's like I'm not sure he was sitting on some like at hot clappers, and maybe he was. I don't know, but I don't know. I've never seen it. Yeah, somewhere. They're in the shed. Exactly.
Show me the career that goes up and then down.
So many sheds to be uncovered in this world. Well, this was great fun. Thank you, Glenn, for joining us. Your knowledge is deep. Well, I'm sure we'll have you back at some point because you're not just clapper guy. I mean, you have deep knowledge on so many things in this business. So I think we'll come around to something. Maybe we'll do a deep dive with you at some point. That would be fun.
On like K-Pax.
One of our just lab coats, the lab coats of film history.
Bring coffee in a sleeping bag. We're going
from K-Pax to Oscorp. The lab coats. Yeah. Go on.
Coffee. We just did an hour and 20 on chalkboards, guys. This podcast, your friend at your little friend at Bonham's there would look at our podcast and go niche. So, but this was great fun. And where can we find you anywhere? Do you have a MySpace page where you say come sell me your clappers? Do you have anything to promote?
I've got an Instagram, which is where I put up some of the stuff I've got when I can. It's cool movie stuff. On Instagram.
Okay, cool.
Allow me to say it's pretty damn cool at Cool Movie Stuff on Instagram.
I miss out on so many things by not being on Instagram, but I thank my productivity for it. But we'll cross promote.
Ryan, you miss out on a lot of good props, and you missed out on the insurrection because that's how I knew where to go to storm the Capitol. Like if I didn't have social media, I would not have known. A, wear my buffalo horn hat. B, where to urinate in Nancy Pelosi's office. That's the beauty of social media. And also Glenn's movie props. So yeah, you got to get yourself on social media.
Yeah.
All my anti-vax stuff. I mean, I love that.
Yeah. So that's such a small Venn diagram crossover, but I can really
movie prop collectors. The nice thing was, as we were storming the castle, we did a couple of movie prop deals. I mean, as we were just in there. Yeah. I said storming the castle, which is Princess Bride.
Your shining axe to smash down Nancy Pelosi's office. Yeah, good. That took a dark turn. But so as always, find us on social media at Props Podcast. Cool movie stuff to see all of Glen's cool movie stuff. We'll post anything that we talked about on the podcast here. We'll post still versions of,
or
on
watch
the feed.
it on YouTube where you can see it in action.
You can see it all. My Princess Bride clapper. I'll post up my Blade Runner clapper. And then certainly subscribe to us, rate us 5 stars, review us on all available platforms, subscribe, and then use your prop store code, assuming that's still
I think that's
long
gone.
You should just go on and just enter Ryan 10 if you buy something on prop store, or really anywhere. I mean, if you buy something at Tesco, you should enter Ryan.
The worst
10
it can say to you is that code is no longer valid.
That is not a valid code, but thank you for it.
Feel free to use your Glen 11 code.
Anyway. There you go. Very good.
Which oddly, the Glen 11 code is a 9% discount. It doesn't really make any sense. Glen 11 gives you a 9% discount, but okay. Yeah.
That's why it's funny. And then as always, just join us next week here on The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.